daughters, Katie and Kelly.
Where do we stand?
Right there is fine.
This is yours, ma'am. We are so, the board is so happy to present this to you all. Katie.
And Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, get them to turn around and face the camera.
Yeah,
Face the
yeah.
camera over there.
Mr. Chairman, maybe all the family members would like to come.
Yes, that's a good idea. All the family members, come on up.
And friends.
Yes. Don't be scared. We ain't gonna bite nobody.
I got a mask on, I can't bite. Where's the mother? Don't come on around, come back.
Yeah, we get it.
We get in the back here.
This is a beautiful, large family. No question about it. Thank you, Michelle.
And if they could remain standing, the delegate has arrived and would like to present.
And coming from, also from Richmond, is our delegate, Mr. Matt Ferris. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Welcome. Tell you, this is a big crowd here. I didn't realize that Dr. Harvey had such a big family. I understand some of you traveled pretty far, and I think that's a big testament to what he meant to all of us here in Appomattox, and this is something I'm very proud to be a part of. Thank y'all for sharing him with us. We need more like him in today's society, that's for sure. I have this resolution here, and I won't read it, but I have one for his wife and each one of his daughters. But I'll tell you that it's talks about Hampton-Sydney College and his times there, and but anyhow, the last part of it says that the House of Delegates here note that great sadness, the loss of Paul Douglas Harvey, and the clerk of the House Delegates prepares a copy of this resolution presented to the family of Paul Douglas Harvey as an expression of the House of Delegates' respect for his memory. The state of Virginia, it was blessed by Paul, and we appreciate what the family has sharing him with the state, and thank y'all very much.
Now, this is also a golden opportunity for anyone who would like to say anything. Yes. Feel free.
I'll say something. I'm Kelly, one of his daughters. I know that Dad was so proud to serve as mayor of the town of Appomattox for 12 years and to be elected to the town council. It just really meant a lot to him, and he loved his town, and we're very, very proud of him. So thank you for recognizing his accomplishments and service.
As the delegate said, we thank you all for sharing him with us. Anyone else like to say anything?
I just know he loved this town so much. And anything he could do, he would do it in a heartbeat. And I really love this town and the people here. I will be sad.
Yes. We want you to come back. And of course, all of you all are always welcome to come back to paradise. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Yes, sir.
lost, sir. You are lost. I got to know you're in paradise. You're in paradise. Yes, sir. Really good. This is a good man to know.
Let me get my mask on. I'm not very good. Okay.
We need to officially, has been pointed out, to approve this resolution. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the resolution.
Is there a second? Discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Delegate Ferris, you have anything you would like to say to the board at this time?
Just thank y'all for all you've been doing through these times. And it's, you probably know I've been working close with Susan, and we'll just keep up the good work. Thank y'all for your support.
Thank you for your support.
Sammy, I can do mine now if you want.
Yes, sir.
Clear there to go up to.
Mr. Abbott has the floor.
I wanted tonight, thank you, and I promise not to trespass on y'all's time, but about 2 minutes, because we've got a big agenda. I just want to announce that I am not going to run for reelection this November. And I want to thank all of you all for working so well as a team. I want to thank the two senior members for your guidance and direction and the hard work you've given me. And especially I'd like to thank the two members that are junior to me. Y'all dedication is second to none. Your expertise you've brought to this board, your willingness to work as a team, I really appreciate it. And I will tell you, if somebody had given me the ability to handpick the representatives from each of y'all's district, I don't think I could have picked anybody better than y'all. And the other thing is, in 30 years of serving this county and 7 other counties, I worked with a lot of county administrators, and I'll tell you, Susan Adams is at the top of my list. And I may at another time have a little bit to say when it's not so busy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. And I say thank you with regrets, because we do not want to see you leave. And thank you for all your knowledge and your expertise in guiding us, this board, in the direction that we are going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Citizen public comment period. Has anybody signed up? No, sir. Okay. Did anybody at this time would like to address the board and didn't have an opportunity to sign up? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right on. We'll go into our appearances. First is Mr. Chip Dix, Gentry Law Firm, on behalf of Interjack Group. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Gonna remove my mask here.
Please.
So good evening, and it's good to see my old friend Watkins. We served in the General Assembly together back in the day, and so appreciate the opportunity to appear before you tonight. I'll be relatively brief because you've got a big agenda. So I represent a company called Interjax, and there's a slide presentation up, and we'll kind of see if I can operate this, and we'll flick through the slide presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe not that. So maybe I need some technology help.
Do the one right below the one you're pressing. There we go.
Okay, there we are. So this is a proposed solar energy project, and as Watkins knows, I'm involved in writing a lot of the solar and energy storage legislation in the General Assembly, and have for not quite a decade. So we've changed the whole landscape of energy in Virginia. There's some misnomers about solar energy, that it's more expensive. Actually, the solar projects, the large-scale solar projects, can deliver electric energy at about 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour, which is very cheap compared to the retail cost of solar. The other thing about solar is that it needs to go through an RFP process, and the State Corporation Commission utility laws protect consumers to make sure that it is the least cost energy source. So there's protection for consumers in terms of increases in rates, and there's also protection through a competitive bid process for projects. And in this particular project, Intergex would propose to operate the project themselves, and then they would sell electricity to the grid. And they would sell it at a wholesale rate so that the consumer would be able to benefit from that price differential. So that is sort of the backdrop with all of that. This project would have a capacity of about 60 megawatts. It basically would be located on about 350 acres, an additional 100 acres of buffers and setbacks and whatnot. There's one landowner that owns this property. It's dramatically different from the project that you heard about before. And I'll show you in a slide in a minute what the project used to look like and what the project looks like today. As we met, so let me explain this. There's a process called the siting agreement process, some legislation that we wrote working with rural counties, and I know you all are a member of the Rural County Solar Coalition. And working with that group, what we did was we basically created a structure somewhat like a landfill host agreement, where the solar applicant says to you, we're proposing to locate a solar project in your county, and we are required to meet with the county administrator and county attorney. We had that meeting, and Johnny joined us as planning director. And so we had a good conversation about what the law says we're supposed to talk about, explain the siting agreement legislation, also explain that it runs tandem with the land use. So we still file the normal process for conditional use. We go through that process. We go through the site plan process. We do all of that. And it has to be a good land use case, and it has to make sense in the district that it's located in. But there's also a financial discussion that goes on at the same time. And that financial discussion is called a siting agreement. I watched Dominion make that presentation last month, and I was supposed to be on the agenda last month, but I had a little bit of a sore throat, and I didn't want to come to Appomattox with a sore throat, right? So it turned out to just be seasonal allergies, so it didn't have any COVID disease or anything like that, but at the same time, wanted to err on the safe side, which is why I wasn't with you last month. But I watched the presentation, so I know what Dominion presented. So this land use process, and we'd start with a pre-application conference, just like you always do, and go through that process and we'd have community meetings, we'd listen to citizens, we try to improve the project. And I think you'll see in a minute that we've done a lot to improve this project from the way it was proposed before. So roughly in benefits, this would be about $4.5 million to the county over the life of the project. So that's this slide. This is the slide showing, again, if you do machinery and tools tax, which Dominion talked about, and I know Robert Crockett has presented to you on that, if you do machinery and tools tax, the total amount over the project is about $3.8 million. If you do revenue share with the escalator, the 10% escalator every 5 years, which Robert and I worked at this year and got it past the General Assembly, that comes to $4.5 million. And currently the project in real estate taxes over the life of the project would generate $121,000. So this is the project overview. Basically, you know, solar doesn't have any noise coming from it, doesn't have any chemicals coming from it, doesn't have any transportation, no traffic needs or anything else. Once you're past construction, it stays in the field and you buffer it, which I'll show you some of the buffer pictures in here, and you can't see it, you can't hear it. The useful life here is proposed to be 35 years. So this is the general area it is. I'll show the specific. So before this project had a number of different landowners, and you can see the project was substantially larger and in areas where people, quite frankly, said they didn't want it. And so what we tried to do is to narrow it back to an area that would be redesigned, much smaller, have one landowner. It would be able to be buffered, and we'd be able to protect the interest of everybody in the redesign. So that's the proposed redesign. So these are the adjoining property owners. Johnny suggested we include those in the list so you see the adjoining property owners. So in this particular project, one of the things that Interjex does is they have an agreement with the Beekeeper Association of Virginia. And what we do is we do pollinator gardens all throughout the project. So over 50 acres of pollinator meadows, as you would see, with lots of blooming plants, and make sure that bees and honeybees and whatnot can enjoy those, and it's not an industrial type facility. Then there's substantial setbacks. You keep the existing vegetation. You plant additional vegetation to make sure people can't see it. Because the most important thing about a project, particularly a solar project, is you can't see it. You don't want to see it. So, and we'd avoid all impact to historic or cultural resources. This is an example about on Pumping Station Road, the planned vegetation of what it would look like. And we would put the vegetation in, but when construction commences, so the vegetation would have a chance to grow before the solar panels are installed. And so you get that extra vegetation growth. And then here's along Pumping Station Road again, some additional vegetation on the other side of railroad tracks. And the project timeline is that it could be in operation as early as 2022. So that would mean that for the 23 fiscal year, the revenue would be available. And also, in any of these projects, you propose a voluntary payment as well as the additional tax payments. So, and this is contact information. So the bottom line on this is that, first of all, we approached the staff with the siting agreement discussion. So the next step on that process would be for us to send a draft of the legal document to Tom so he could take a look at it and we could work out the legalese. Then the next thing we would do is we'd work with Susan and we'd come up with some proposed financials. Now that's one side of the project. At the same time, we'd have a pre-application with Johnny and we'd start the land use process and we'd start meeting with citizens and we'd start dealing with any issues that people have and start working on those. We want to be a good community partner. And we realized that this project didn't start off on the right foot before, and we hope to be able to turn that around and start off on a much better foot going forward. And we'll see if we can work together to do something. We might be able to reach consensus, we might not be able to. And so at the same time, we'll give it the good old college try and see if we can come up with something that the community would embrace and would be a revenue asset. The one thing about the revenues from the siting agreement, let me just mention this. Normally, when you look at a land use project of any kind, what happens is that the money that comes from that project has to be reasonably related to that project. If you're going to use the money, it has to be reasonably related. And that is through a conditional use or a special exception process in the Code of Virginia. What we did with the siting agreement legislation, though, is we made the funds unrestricted. So you have a right to use those funds for whatever purpose, for schools, for anything that's a capital item, or you have a right to receive the revenue on an annual basis and make it subject to annual appropriation over the 35-year period of time. So there's a lot of flexibility what you can do with that. The other thing you could do with that is you have a right, because it is revenue and not a general obligation bond. The Board of Supervisors under the siting agreement legislation has the ability to do an anticipation bond and anticipate that $4.5 million worth of revenue and get a chunk of money up front to do a capital item. And you have the authority to bind future boards of supervisors should you choose to do so. You're not required to make that decision up front. The siting agreement legislation says you can make that decision at any time over the next 35 years. And so there's a lot of flexibility in what you do with that. And the legislation was drafted intentionally to provide boards of supervisors with that kind of authority. So tonight is just an introduction. to indicate to you, to let you know, because it's important that as board members, you know the discussions that we're having with staff and the discussions we're having with Johnny on the land use side. And then we'll begin the land use process and continue the siting agreement process, and then keep you posted. We like to do informational sessions where we come back and give you an update on what we're doing, just so that you are in the know and that you know exactly who we're talking with, what we're doing, what we proposed, how we've addressed concerns that come up in discussion and so on. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Any about the legislation, because I had a hand in writing all those pieces of legislation over the last few years. And I'll just tell you that the solar industry, I represent the solar industry broadly, the solar industry wanted to make sure that rural Virginia did not get left out of the renewable energy change in energy policy. Because up until the last couple of years, there really wasn't an economic development asset and no reason really for you to approve a solar project. So what we tried to do was to create an economic development asset. We're not creating jobs, but we're not burdening the county with any services either. And so it's a different kind of economic development asset, but it's an economic development asset just the same. So with that, I'm finished, Mr. Chairman, unless there be questions.
Is there any question from any board member? Well, we appreciate you coming by. and
Thank you, sir.
talking with us, and have a safe journey home.
I will.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you, Watkins. Take care, and congratulations. Good night.
Next, we have from Southside Electric Cooperative, update Mark Thomas, Ron White, and Brad Furr. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, Ms. Adams, and other county staff members. I'm Mark Thomas with Southside Electric Cooperative. And Mr. Chairman, as I always tell you when I stand before you, it's good to be back in my home county, or as you said just a little while ago, paradise. And I want to thank you and thank the board for the opportunity to make a presentation to you tonight about Winter Storm Shirley. And I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues at Southside. Brad Furr is our Director of Operations, and Ron White is our Vice President of Member and Public Relations. And I'm sorry, Brad is Vice President of Operations, not Director. I apologize. I believe Ron will be making our presentation, so Brad will. I'm sorry. I'll turn it over to you, Brad.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, I understand we have 15 minutes
Yes, sir.
or less. Thank you. What we hope to accomplish is just tell you a little bit about what was involved with the restoration, Southside Electric's restoration following Winter Storm Shirley. Southside Electric's main lender is the Rural Utilities Service, and that's a leg or an arm of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Because of that, we build to our U.S. standards. We've done that since 1937. So what does that mean? We design, if you look at the map on the board, we have a couple of ice loading zones, heavy and medium, and our service territory is split by that, but we've always built to the heavy ice loading standards. What that means is we build for a ½ inch of radial ice at 0 degrees Fahrenheit with a 40-mile-per-hour wind. And that's as heavy as it comes here in this area. When we go beyond that with the ice, it just exceeds those design standards. So what does that look like? If you have a 300-foot span, which is an average span for Southside Electric with number 2 wire, it's about 32 pounds what that weighs, that one piece of wire. But if you put a ½ inch of ice on it, that's an additional 153 pounds. Take it up another -- inch, now you're to 300 pounds. So the thing to point out is that the ice loading, the weight loading, is exponential as the ice builds. It's important to note that there is no design standard, excuse me, for the weight of a tree that falls, the shock load when it hits a line or near a power pole. So to talk a little bit about our emergency restoration plan, as we were coming into that first week, it was about February 5th or 6th, we began hearing about the potential ice storm. Forecasts were all over the place, and we used multiple forecasting agencies to draw our conclusions. So during the middle of the week, we activated our ERP, Emergency Restoration Plan, and all that does is it sets into motion a set of meetings, set of checklists we go through. Do we have our generators fueled? Do we have the poles in stock we need, the wire, the sleeves, things like that? And we're pretty good at that. We've done that a lot over the past few years. During this storm, I'm proud to say there were very few injuries. There were no Southside Electric employee injuries, but from the large number of people we had helping from outside of our organization, we had 3 injuries. There was a bruised face, guy fell in the right-of-way and cut his leg, got some stitches, and then one fellow hyperextended his knee. But all of those people, they were minor injuries, and they were okay. No COVID cases for any SEC employees during that entire period, which is, you'll see in a bit, we had about 1,000 people restoring power towards the end of the storm. So once the storm was over, the work began. We had about 70 broken poles. Once the storm was over, during that first full week, we replaced all of those 70. We continued to find broken poles as we went through the process. We had about 50 services where the meter base was torn off the house, and that's where the counties get involved because many times there's inspections that are required, and so it's an effort from both sides to try to get power onto some of these folks that were unfortunate enough to have that happen. The continued recovery, and forgive me, I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing, we brought in a third party, Osmos. They're doing inspections on the 80 or so circuits that were locked out at the station that had the most damage. And so we estimate that cost to be at about $820,000, take about 60 days. And through that process, that's going to create a lot more work that has to be done. Some of the things that we've done, we've brought in additional hazard tree crews. We're going to do additional aerial trimming, bringing in a couple of crews to work with that aerial helicopter trimmer because it creates havoc on the ground when you're cutting, sky to ground to sky. And just wanted to point out, $1.9 million, we've increased our budget on the right-of-way for this year. It's about $5.3 million before we increased to $1.9 million. So, and we expect that could go up as well. So looking back in history, let's talk a little bit about reliability for Southside Electric members. 2003 is the first year on here, and as you can see, if you were here back during Hurricane Isabel, we were at about 600 minutes of SAIDI, and SAIDI stands for System Average Interruption Duration Index. So what is the average outage you could expect if you were a member of Southside back in 2003? As you can see over time, it's trended downward, and we're at about half of that now. CAIDI is Customer Average Interruption Duration Index. It stands for It represents how quickly we respond to those outages. So it was over 200 minutes back in 2003. It's down to about 100 now. And so you can see a downward trend there as well. So the State Corporation Commission issued a request for information. It's 42 questions. Southside Electric gets these from time to time after large events. You can see some of those bullets on there, Tropical Storm Ernesto, and so on. We've had those inquiries. It's important to note that during this storm, we also had inquiries, or the State Corporation Commission asked Mecklenburg Electric, Southside Electric, and Dominion for the same information. And that report will be available publicly once it's out, and that's kind of out of our control at this point. We have submitted our data. That was submitted on April the 2nd, and we're awaiting the feedback from the State Corporation Commission. So vegetation management. From time to time, we bring in a third party to do an oversight, if you will, to take a look at our system holistically. And what we found over the past when we've done this is that we deal with about 2.2 million trees every vegetation cycle. 87% of our rights of way have trees on both sides, so a significant impact from trees during any type of weather event. In our vegetation management program, I won't read through these. We do side trimming, herbicide, ground clearing in some cases, aerial trimming, et cetera. But you'll be able to see when we look at our budget that we've continued to spend a lot of money towards right-of-way. This is looking at our right-of-way spending over the past years. What I'll say here is that typically speaking, the way the State Corporation Commission works with our rates, when we get a rate increase, we tend to spend more money on right-of-way. As we're unable to spend as much, it wanes a little bit, and then as we get another rate increase, then you'll see spending go back up, and we spend as much as we can feasibly spend on right-of-way each year. This is just the number of trees we've cut. We didn't have an official hazard tree removal plan until 2010. That was one of the recommendations that came out of that third-party assessment. Across here, you'll see the various, several thousand trees we're cutting each year as hazard trees that are outside of our rights-of-way. In 2018, there was an anomaly. We had multiple large storms, major event days, and so we removed a lot of those trees during that time that aren't accounted for here. So vegetation storm facts for this storm, we had 2,136 outages. Of that, about 1,500 or so were tree-related. And I'll take you to the bottom bullet, 1,440 of those were noted as trees outside of our right-of-way. And if we get to the pictures, I'll show you some of those. It becomes clear that the rights-of-way are in pretty good shape. These trees that come from outside are difficult to predict. Pole inspections. We have a third party that comes in. We've got a great pole inspection program. We go around and we do inspections visually. They do below-ground inspections, boring of the pole, sounding of the pole, all industry standard best practices. Through that time, we locate 3.5% to 5% failure rates, meaning these poles are ending or entering their end of life. Very few are imminent failure. We do get a small percentage that are imminent failure, 5 to 10 per cycle, and we go out and replace those nearly immediately. The other ones we replace within 12 to 24 months. So there's some cost estimates. You hear folks telling you the things that you need to do to improve the electric reliability. But before we go into that, I wanted to show you a couple of things. Our total utility plant's $386 million. Of that, the debt is $211 million. So pretty big numbers until you start looking at what it costs to do some of these things that people suggest. So what if we replaced all the copper on our system? It would cost us about $240 million. So I don't have to point out the total utility plant we have now is currently $360 million. What if we put everything underground? That would take care of the right-of-way problems. That would take care of the overhead problems, is what people say. That's over $1 billion. Our members simply can't afford that. What if we would widen the right-of-way from 30 and 40 feet to 100 feet? First, it wouldn't solve all the problems. Second, it's $1 billion undertaking. Again, our members can't afford that. And then what a lot of folks think it's because we have older poles on our system, and we do. I'll tell you, during this storm, when we looked at the data, we had poles that had been replaced last year that were broken and poles that were put in back in the 70s and 80s that were broken. When we do our inspections, we don't replace them based on age. We replace them based on integrity. So if we were to replace all of the poles that were 30 years or older, it would be $165 million, and that's just to get it to that standard. We'd have to spend another 8 or so each year to keep it there. From a public relations standpoint, we used social media. We used broadcast media to get our message out. We began holding meetings on February the 18th with the county administrators, state representatives, the staff level at Southside Electric. We all were on these calls. About 15 minutes, we kept them short, and we were able to provide good information and get pretty good feedback from the counties. A lot of folks, you'll hear them say they had trouble getting through. We use a group called the Cooperative Response Center, CRC, and they have 3 areas, call centers in this nation, one in Texas, one in Minnesota, and one in Tennessee. Well, the storm had come through Texas, and that place was shut down because of broken pipes and water issues, no power. The one in Tennessee was running on generators and had limited throughput on their telephones. And so most of the traffic was going to Minnesota. And keep in mind, it's not just Southside Electric that's dealing with this. This storm has come, through the southeast, and it has ravaged a lot of the various organizations that use the Cooperative Response Center. So there were instances where people were getting busy signals and not getting answered the way we would like for them to. Having said all that, we got some great community support. You can see up here, one of the pictures has got a bulldozer pulling a truck out. We got cards and letters from people after the fact. There were people that would set up stations that had coffee and food for the line personnel. It was just an outpouring of support from a large majority of our members. This shows a little bit about where the help came from. As far south as Georgia, as far northwest as Indiana. And you'll see through some of these slides, we had 942 outdoor personnel at one point in time. So it was a major undertaking. Some people ask, why did Mecklenburg and Dominion restore the power more quickly? If you look closely here, it's difficult to see, but the darkest area of ice accumulation, if you look closely, there's a yellow outline in there. That's our service territory. It's wholly within that dark area. And so the bottom edge, Mecklenburg, they were hitting their western area, but in their eastern area, they were kind of in that lighter ice accumulation area. And as I showed you, ice accumulation impact is exponential. There was some talk about SEC having cut our our maintenance budget. And when you look at the Form 990, which is a public document, it shows that we spent more in 2018 than 19. Well, there's a reason for that. Tropical Storm Michael came through in October, and inflated the amount of money we spent towards maintenance. And then in 2019, we got our FEMA reimbursement approved, and so that, from an accounting entry, took off money. So if you take that out, the budget for 2018 was about 10 million, and for 19 it was about 11 million. So it's a spin on, we didn't cut our budget, we just spent a different amount based on these accounting issues. System metrics, I won't read them all. We serve 57,000 meters, about 128,000 poles, and so we have a significant territory, 9,400 miles of line, if you can put that in perspective. A lot to deal with out there. From this storm perspective, started on the 12th, ended on the 26th, 13 days, 10 hours is what we estimated at. And I say that because you have to predict, you have to determine which outage was the first one, which was the last one. You have to pick a place to do that. But 866 broken poles. When I show you some of the next slides, you'll see how that compares to other storms. This is just showing personnel that we had restoring power each day. We tipped 1,000, and that includes indoor personnel. We were about 942 during that for outside personnel only. The most we had in the past that we can put our finger on was about 400 during Isabel. And the reason this storm was so significant is the number of broken poles. On the left, you see that we're about 103 strong in our fleet. We had 577 here during the storm restoration. We have one track machine. There were 21 additional track machines here because the conditions were very wet. There's some rumors that we ran out of material. I can tell you we have a great supply chain. We didn't run out of any material. When you look here, the orange line shows you the number of poles we had when we started, 287. And then the bar graph shows some of the storms that we had and how many poles we replaced during those storms. So you might say, okay, you had 287 poles, but you replaced 866. Didn't you run out? Well, no, we took deliveries multiple times a day, and even on the weekends. We never ran out of material. Storm comparisons, I'll point you to 3 lines here: the total cost, the field personnel, and then the number of broken poles. And you can see that the number of broken poles significantly slows down restoration, and it drives the cost up. This is just to point out that when you bring in a large contingent of people, you have to take care of them. You have to find a place for them to sleep, something for them to eat. We get to a point where you have to do laundry, so we're dealing with that in the background as well. Now we're to the photos. I'll go through these, and I think we'll wrap up here shortly. A lot of ice accumulation. This is in the Dinwiddie area, Danieltown. If you look there and then look at the measurement, slightly over 3/4 of an inch. I think it's even more profound than it is because the finger there is over some of the ice. If you look down through here, I'll kind of draw your attention to the rights-of-way. You'll see all these trees are from outside the right-of-way, and the rights-of-way are relatively clear. It's just something that's very, when Mother Nature decides that she's going to issue something like this, look at the right-of-way and then where the trees come from, that there's no great way to prepare for it from a system standpoint. We just have to be able to make sure we can respond. We have the relationships to bring in the outside personnel, and we can just continue until the power's back on. In my career, I've worked a couple of storms that took 14 days. I was astounded we got this one on in less than 14 days. Here's a couple of pictures of being pulled in and out from locations. We've got support from farmers, from businesses. Of course, working at night is much more difficult. We do work at night, but we don't have large contingents of folks out at night like we do during the day. Very wet conditions. These are actual conditions we had to deal with. It rained a lot during the restoration effort. Something you usually get pretty good weather after a hurricane. After an ice storm, it can be tough. And this is the last slide. It just shows one of the mornings where we're staging and getting ready to get out in the field. We had a large contingent of people, and it was a great effort. I think you have the slide presentation. I'll be glad to entertain any questions now. If you don't have time, you can feel free to reach out to me later, and I'll be glad to address any questions you have. Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from any members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Evans?
I appreciate y'all coming in here with this cover your butt presentation. It's still perception in the people I've talked to is y'all did a pretty poor job. You had a lot of statistics here for us today of why you didn't know, why you were slow. But when I asked for a report that y'all came here quoted why you couldn't do high-speed internet, you wouldn't give me the report. You wouldn't give me the statistics. I'm a member of your co-op, and you wouldn't give me one. But, boy, you were quick with them tonight.
Yes, sir.
Questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question regarding floor cleaning of the right-of-way. I think that's the term I want to use.
Yes, sir.
One of my contentions was, called me because after they went through and cleaned the floors, they had, it was a bunch of, pine, 1.5 to 2 inches diameter. And basically, after your team went through, there was all these just little piney sticks going up, waving and then she's got all kinds of erosion, just bare earth erosion now after the rain. And their question was, is there anything in your cleanup that you come in and like reseed those areas to prevent erosion, or what is your plan in that, or you don't have one?
Our practice is not to do that following storm restoration. If we're coming through doing our normal cycle and we take trees down, we do windrow them or remove them if they're manicured areas.
This was the regular maintenance. It was before the storm, and it was part of your regular cleaning.
If it was regular maintenance where we came through and did our side trimming, we should have cleared the right-of-way floor. We typically do that. If you have some specific information, I can follow up with you. Yes, sir.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you, sir, coming and bringing us the update.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Gary Wood, President and CEO of Central Virginia Electric Cooperative. Mr. Gary Wood, President and CEO of Central Virginia Electric Cooperative, has requested to appear before the board to provide an update on the Firefly project in Appomattox. Additionally, CVEC is considering a regional broadband partnership and would like to obtain the board study for Appomattox County to participate in the study. If the board opts to participate, CVEC is requested to enter into an MOU with the county. Welcome, sir. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Should have put my glasses on before I tried to squint and read there, right? Thank you for giving us a chance to come up and give you a quick update on where we stand with the Firefly and CVEC project. And by the way, I apologize for not wearing my vest, or my nice sport coat, because I do that when I talk on the co-op side. But tonight I'm really here for Firefly, and we can only afford a fleecy right now. Maybe in the next year I'll get a sport coat. So the up, press down button to move the next slide. Okay. So the electric co-op, we really appreciate the Appomattox partnership we've had in terms of building our fiber project with the co-op. We started here because you were the first group to sign on. We had a grant, and we started out of our Appomattox substation. I am happy to tell you that within the next week or so, we will be finished our major construction in Appomattox on the CVC line. So we're also going to be the first county we finish in here. Now, we still have connections to make, and we still have some people, we got to put service drops and those things, but the main fiber is up. They're doing some final splicing, and then the 3,526 electric accounts that are Central Virginia will all have access to gigabit speed broadband if they want it. Then we're going to talk about some other things in a little bit, but that's a quick update. I was looking, and I didn't call the numbers up specifically. When we first started, we were working under a feasibility study that assumed we'd have 35% take rate within the first 2 years in an area that we went into. We saw immediately that we did better than that. And now that we've been out of Appomattox, we started building in the Appomattox substation in 2018. That's up over 75% of the folks are connected who we pass. And the newer areas we're going in, we're consistently hitting over 50%, 50 to 60% when we first go into an area. Part of that, COVID really pushed everyone to recognize the need for broadband at home. We already knew it was important, but it became even more important with remote work and virtual schooling and all those things. So it's gone well. I hope it's gone well for you. I know you wish it was even faster and that we were in the rest of the county. So let's talk a little bit about that. Firefly is moving on. We still have a lot of co-op members in other counties to connect. We intend to finish all of our fiber in the CVEC area by July 1st of 2022. So we have a lot of work to do in the next, was that 14 months, something like that. still in parts of Nelson County and Amherst and Albemarle and a lot in Buckingham. But we are also starting to plan for what happens after that. And Firefly was always set up so that we could go into areas outside the CVEC area. Just recently, we announced a partnership with Dominion to build some on their lines, and with Rappahannock to build some on their lines. I will tell you that we made contact with Southside, and we've talked some to AEP. And I don't have resolutions to those things yet, but let me tell you what we are doing and kind of where we stand. This is Appomattox electric service areas. That salmon color, kind of pinkish color, is CVEC. Dominion is the purplish blue, and the aqua is Southside. Here are what's been defined as underserved areas according to the FCC, or areas that still need broadband service that don't have service access at least 25 megabit per second download speed and 3 megabit per second upload speed. The green, again, is mostly our footprint. You can see that has service. And we also called in a little bit of where we got some Reconnect grant money in there. With this partnership, we are doing it's a three-phase project. Right now it covers the Dominion area, and I hope to include the Southside area. We have some work to do over the next couple of months if that's going to come through. But the first thing we're going to ask you to do is sign a memorandum of understanding that covers the Dominion area. It doesn't commit you to anything in terms of dollars. It does say, if you read the memorandum of understanding, that we can ask you for some money to fund our study that we're going to do this summer, but we're not going to ask individual counties to do any funding of that. We're going to ask some of the regional partnerships to help us find some grants and maybe offset the cost a little bit. This summer, we're going to identify in every county in the Dominion, all the Dominion areas, every unserved location. If we can include Southside, we'll find every unserved location in the county and identify it so that we know where they are. That allows us to go back and get a grant application into the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. It also allows Dominion to go to the State Corporation Commission and get approval for them to build their fiber. So the Dominion system has legislation now that allows them to build fiber on their lines and lease it to an internet service provider like Firefly. But they have to get approval and show that it's serving unserved areas. So this summer, we're going to identify those unserved areas, come up with a cost for the project. We will come back to you and show you what the cost is to build out the rest of the county and get all of the unserved areas. We'll show where we think we can get funding from Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, and if we need additional funding from you, we'll tell you what that is. I will tell you that the VATI grant program has emphasized a couple of things this year. One is they like larger projects. They like universal service, which means if we can get Southside in, that gets us more points. And they like local participation in terms of some funding. They're not going to look to you at the same level, but there may be something that we come back to you for. At that point, you'll have another decision to make, and you can decide you want to be in the program, we want to do the build-out, or not. And if you are, Dominion goes off and gets their approval. We put our application into VATI, and the construction would really start next year in those areas. Dominion is looking at, we're looking at a 8 or 9 county area. All total would be about 350 miles of construction on the Dominion system, by my estimate. That's not Dominion's. Let me just say that since they're not here in case they read it somewhere. And for us, we would build another 400 to 500 miles of line. So we're going to come off of their line and serve the homes nearby and then build some small taps ourselves. So it's about 800 miles total across those 8 or 9 counties. To give you a reference for that, Central Virginia Electric has been building 800 to 1,000 miles ourselves in each of the last several years, and will be this year. So it's feasible that if we can get this moving next year, we can get it done certainly in 12 to 18 months. Again, that's my estimate. somewhere Dominion will be watching this, and I'll get an email, a nasty gram in a little bit. But that's what our project looks like. We're going to ask you if you would sign that MOU tonight. If what it does do is it commits you to work with us during this period so we can do the study and look at our numbers before you decide to partner with anybody else for the VATI grant. So we're asking, and just for you to commit to us for the short term while we're doing this. So that's my ask tonight. That's my update, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any board member have any questions?
Chairman, I just, since I'm on y'all, Firefly, I really appreciate the good job it does. It's, I've heard nothing but compliments, and I wish you all, I hope you can cover the whole county. We need it.
Well, we're looking for every opportunity because we really believe if you live in a rural area and if you can get electricity, you ought to be able to get broadband. And we're not, one of the things you'll see when we bring our study back is we don't have high margins. We'll show you what we can fund out of the fiber, out of our rates, and then show you what the difference is that we need in grants in order to make it work economically. But I appreciate those kind words. I know we're still a young company and growing. We're not perfect, but we're working really hard and we're growing really fast. Last week we went over 7,500 total subscribers, and we started 2019 with 5. So it's pretty fast growth.
Real bad. Any more additional questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, we've got about a minute for our public hearing begins.
Would the board consider approving the MOU that's in the packet?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Adams. Is there a motion then to support the Regional Broadband Initiative and to enter into the MOU with CBEC? So moved. Is that second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, Ms. Adams. I got 7 o'clock. Okay, next on our agenda is a public hearing. Proposed FY 21-22 budget public hearing. After being duly advertised, a public hearing is being held to receive public comment on the proposed FY 22 school and county budget in the amount of $43,925,091. Anyone here to address the board that's for this or against? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and upon closing the hearing, we need to consider suggested changes prior to the final budget approval on May the 17th. Is that right, Ms. Adams?
Yes, sir, and also, Mr. Carter, we have additional requests. I think we've done additional requests for the school system that you will need to consider prior to that
Final to the May 17th.
Yes.
Okay. Moving right along. FY 2021 budget appropriations for the fourth quarter. At the June 25th, 2020 special call meeting, the board voted to adopt the FY 21 budget in the amount of $41,932,881 and to appropriate 25% of the budget at the beginning of each quarter so that the board can assess the receipt of revenues. Any discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I
Mr.
move
Deb.
we, excuse me, I didn't step on somebody, did I? I'm just gonna
No.
get it, just move it, we appropriate the 10 million.
Motion duly made, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. Mr. Abbott.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next is purchasing manual, section 5, surplus property, proposed revisions. And you have before you what our purchasing agent, Mr. Spencer, has outlined. got three different areas there. Give you a second to read over. I know you've already done it, but just in case anything that anybody has any issue or concern over.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Hogan.
I don't have any issue per se. I just want a little clarification maybe in the new language on the Gov Deals public auction website. It talks about, has to be online for no less than 2 weeks. And then if it's not sold, then it goes back on for, says that we may hold subsequent 2-week auctions as necessary. And then it talks about if there's a third online auction and nobody buys it, we can give it away. So is it really 2 auctions or 3 auctions? I'm a little bit confused by the language. Is it the second and third week auctions a 1-week auction? Or is it 3 2-week auctions?
Mr. Spencer, you in the limelight.
The intent was, to make it so that we would try our best to sell it 2 auctions. If a third one was deemed as being necessary, great, we would go ahead with the third one, but we would also have the opportunity at that point to surpluses off to another locality that might need it or to a nonprofit. So ultimately, it was kind of be a little flexibility there. It is entirely in our consideration here now that we reword that and make it so that it's just all consistent. You either do it for 2 times or you do it for 3 times. I was trying to be, I didn't want to just give things away too soon. I wanted to give it enough opportunity for people to see it and to be able to purchase, so it's not just to give county property away. So that's why I was trying to add that other auction in there.
So it's 6 weeks.
That would be, if you did three complete auctions for 2 weeks, yes, you would end up with 6 weeks that it would be out there. And at that point, if you wanted to just say that after 6 weeks, then we could dispose of it however necessary in terms of another locality, given to a nonprofit.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. I'm just thinking, if nobody's bid on it in a month, we had 2 separate auctions, is there any point in having a third one? That's the only thing I'm thinking.
Personally, on most stuff, no. If it was a car or something like that, possibly. But on most stuff, it's really not necessary. Again, I was just trying to make it so that we were giving people the opportunity, but in a sense, that third auction, in most cases, probably is not necessary.
And we would have the right to refuse a bid if it comes in under what we think it should bring.
Well,
It doesn't matter how many weeks we auction it, right?
well, when you put a reserve out there, if it doesn't meet the reserve, then we have the ability to go ahead and sell to the high bid. Let's say the reserve was $1,000 and somebody had $990. You could go ahead and just hit a button and it goes to that person who bid $990. Or you can hit a button and it just re-auctions it. So there's different options at that point.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, what's the board's pleasure? Approve the addition of the county purchasing manual as presented by Mr. Spencer. That motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, is that second? Additional questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
did we not want to revise that to 2 then, with the revised language? Would you be open to amending your motion for 2 auctions rather than 3? Because that's what we'd be voting on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be open to the amendment.
Okay,
Well, I'll move that we amend the proposed revisions to the manual to limit it, to we could get rid of it after 2 auctions instead of 3.
The only thing you need to keep in mind is if you lower that reserve, if it didn't sell the first 2 cycles, if it's, do you want to make money off of it, or do you want to give it away? Is where you would
Well,
be with that 3rd cycle.
And I guess, I'm not saying you have to give it away. I just, if it's obvious you don't need a 3rd auction, nobody's bidding on it.
Right.
You don't have to have a 3rd auction. If you think it's feasible to have a 3rd one, I don't think it would prevent you from having an extra one. This just says you have to have 3 before you give it every time. I don't know if you need 3 every time. I could be wrong.
So what you'd say you do 2, but you would always have the option for doing the 3rd if you wanted
Sure.
to.
If it's-
Based on
You're
that
required
reserve.
to do 2.
Right.
Is that the motion?
I will make, well, Mr. Hinkle made the motion. Do I need to make a motion to amend it?
You amended the
Yeah.
motion to 2.
I'll amend it to say that,
2 initially.
No.
The discretion of the manager to make a 3rd one, because
thank you, Mr. Latchney's verbiage.
The second?
Second?
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, property is requested for surplus. The purchasing agent has attached for our review a list of items to be declared as surplus by the Board of Supervisors. These items will be sold on Gov Deals by the purchasing agent, and proceeds from the sale of these items will be deposited into the county's general fund for future use. Discussion. Is there a motion then to accept the purchasing agent's, list of surplus items and authorize sale?
I'll make that motion to authorize the
You're
list.
declaring it surplus.
I'm sorry?
You're declaring county property surplus.
I'll make a motion to declare that list as surplus property and authorize its sale.
Second. Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Next is community development refund request. Mr. Lonnie Hamlet, billing official, was requesting the board's approval to refund Mr. Philip Pettit $1,064.10 for the building permit number 210027. Due to the continuing rise in the cost of building materials, Mr. Pettit has decided to purchase a home rather than construct a new one. Discussion? Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the refund in the amount of $1,064.10.
Is that second?
Second?
Discussion? We have a roll call vote. Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs? Mr. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hogan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next is scheduled public hearing, RZ 210144, Viper Investments LLC. We need to authorize staff to schedule a public hearing on May the 17th at 7 p.m. to receive comments on a proposed rezoning by Viper Investments LLC. The petition proposes to rezone approximately 3.08 acres located on Richmond Highway in the South Spring area from R1, low-density residential zoning district, to B1, general commercial zoning district, in order to utilize the property for commercial offices. The Planning Commission heard the petition at its April meeting and voted to recommend approval of the petition. With 6-0 vote, Mr. Connor abstained. Prior to our consideration of the petition, a public hearing must be held. So we need a motion to schedule a public hearing May the 17th.
I'll move to schedule the public hearing for this petition May 17th.
Is that second?
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, gentlemen, schedule a public hearing amendment to Comprehensive Plan Growth Management Section. Please authorize staff to schedule and advertise a public hearing for Monday, May 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. to receive comments on proposed amendment to the Growth Management Section of the Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission received a request to amend the future land use map in order for a citizen to develop their property for use as a utility-scale solar farm. Currently, a portion of the property in question is in the area designated as a rural transition area. The request is to amend the designation of this area to a commercial area, matching the designation of the front portion that adjoins Richmond Highway. Per section 15.2-2232 of the Code of Virginia, utility-scale solar projects must be reviewed by the Planning Commission and found to be in substantial accord with the local comprehensive plan. Without this change, the proposed project will not meet the standard. The Planning Commission met in April and voted 4-3 with 3 dissenting, recommended approval of the amendment to change the future land use in the growth management section of the comprehensive plan as requested. Now, the Planning Commission had 3 people that abstained, dissented.
They were against.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Abbott.
would it be proper for us to maybe not act on this tonight and I'd like a report from the Planning Commission, even our staff do it. A 4-3 seems to be some problems there, and I'd like to know what they are. And I'm not sure we would hear them in a public hearing. Or I could say if you hold a public hearing, you could, I certainly would hope we wouldn't act that night, but I'd like a little more information personally.
Rest of the board? I say the same thing, Mr. Hogan.
Is this a time-sensitive issue that needs to be, or are we on a timeline here, or can we wait to get that information?
I don't think there's a time limit, it's just simply an amendment to the comprehensive plan. I don't think, it's not like the 2232 review, if it was that has a time limit to it, but this is just simply an amendment to the plan.
Was that relative to the buffers?
This is just amending the comprehensive plan. Any details of the project itself would come in the CUP process, such as that.
Yeah,
I'd
Mr.
like to
Chairman.
see the amendment to where it amended, where the language changed within the comprehensive plan, and so, that's all. I'll just vote no on a public hearing, doesn't make any difference.
Mr. Hogan.
No, I'm fine with putting it off to next month. I have some questions as well. I've had some constituents raise some concerns. But they have questions more than anything else, and I don't have the answers to those questions either. The one concern I do have is I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the right reason. And it looks like maybe we're putting the cart before the horse. They want to get a solar farm in there, but they can't do that until this is done. But this is supposed to be a comprehensive plan, not for one business. And we need to look at the long-term effects of changing that comprehensive plan.
Mr. Roy.
And that was actually, I think, to answer your question, was the thoughts of the 3 members that were dissenting is we're actually, as you know, every 5 years, the comprehensive plan has to be reviewed and updated, and we're actually, the Planning Commission is going through that process right now. And so those 3 members felt that instead of doing piecemeal here, property there, or whatever, they've looked at that growth management section, they've made some suggested changes to it that's in the broader update, and that update is still ongoing and is probably about 5 to 6 months out from getting finished. So they felt those 3 members felt that it was proper to hold off on amending the comprehensive plan until that update was finished and then do a consideration of any type of amendment at that point. That was their line of thinking.
And I'm not saying I'm for or against what they want to do eventually. I just want to make sure we're doing it right in the first place and looking at it comprehensively. I'll make a motion that we put this off to next month to try to get some more information. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Is that second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is school renovation proposal. The Board of Supervisors and School Board held a joint meeting on Monday, April the 12th, 2021, to participate in a high school renovation project. And we have a letter here from Dr. Bennett. concerning that. Floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hogan.
I brought it up the night of the joint meeting, and I'm for the new proposal, the HVAC work and the addition to the high school. I think all those things are needed. I'm concerned it doesn't do enough. We've been talking for several years now about the needs at that building, and the only need we're addressing is the HVAC system, because the rest of it's going to be a new building, a new wing. We're not addressing the current bathrooms, we're not addressing the floors, the ceilings, the wiring, anything else other than the heat and ventilation and air conditioning. And I would like to know more about option 8 and 9. And didn't really talk about that at the last joint meeting. And I know they're bidding out some roofs now, so maybe that number wouldn't be as high. I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ed.
here are the other things we're doing in security. And we're fixing that, we're moving the administration office around so we can do security. And on behalf of the chairman and committee, this is what we felt we could do without raising taxes. Now, if you want to get into, into more money, I think that's where, but we've got an agreement. I think we reached a pretty good agreement with the school board. And if any board of supervisors, next year, a year after that, and the school board wanted to do something else, such as fix a roof, which the roof doesn't, according to our engineer, we should get 5 to 7 more years out of that roof, and maybe longer, okay? So, the other things, yeah, but this is something that's doable without raising taxes. It limits our exposure, I'm gonna make a motion in a minute, that limits our exposure to $10 million. That is the county's exposure to $10 million. And it adopts what was presented to us the other night, what the company did and what the HVAC system did. I'm sure there's a lot of things that needed to be done and could be done if you had the money.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hinkle.
one of the things that concerns me about alternate 9 was when we moved here, we heard about, Appomattox academic achievements and the pride there. We heard about the athletic achievements and the pride there. And what I see in alternate 9, asking for new finishings of existing building, painting, flooring, tile work, acoustical ceilings. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but to me, why haven't you taken pride in the building? These are maintenance things that should have been done yearly, and I noticed that there seems to be maintenance money left over every year. I see right now only 40% of the school budget for maintenance has been used. And to me, this should have been taken care of with pride in the building long before this point.
I just like to second that most of that is maintenance, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yeah.
And I think the school board was negligent in not holding the school administration to take care of it. It should have been their job to observe and watch and make sure that these things are being done.
Other
And
discussion?
I would, Mr. Chairman, further observe that at one of our joint meetings, we heard from one member of the school board about leaks in the trailers. Mr. Chairman, if you've got a leak in a roof, that's a maintenance problem. That isn't a problem with your trailer. That's a maintenance problem. But anyway, at the proper time, I had to write this motion out because I couldn't, I'll have to read it. I'd like to make a motion when you say it's time.
Okay, any other discussions at this time? Go ahead.
All right. The Board of Supervisors authorizes the school board to enter into negotiations with Jameson Lewis Construction and Southern Air through a PPEA proposal process for the Appomattox County High School renovation project as presented to both boards on Monday, April 12th, 2021. The contractual amount is not to exceed $13 million and is subject to future appropriations by the Board of Supervisors. The proposed contractual agreement should not financially obligate the Board of Supervisors an amount which shouldn't exceed $10 million. Additionally, the contract agreement should include language that does not restrict HVAC system to proprietary control. And the reason for that last sentence is it is costing us a whole lot of money because our new courthouse had that proprietary control, which we have to deal with them, even if we want software for our people to work on it. We have to pay them for the software, which we did was about $13,000. So I would not want to see a proprietary control system put in there who our engineer told us at the meeting that it would be very expensive down the road on the school board. And that is my motion. If anybody wants to read it, I have it here. Oh, you got it. Okay, okay, y'all got it. Good.
All right, the motion has been duly made. Is that a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hope.
If we adopt this tonight, would that mean that we could not in the future come back if we find some funding opportunities? We've got CARES money floating around. We've got, talk of a infrastructure stimulus. We've got talk in Richmond of wanting to help school construction. If there's some other funding opportunities that become available, I just want to make sure this doesn't limit us to being able to go back and do some of these other options.
I don't believe, Mr. Chairman, that the board tonight can restrict what the board will do in 2 months. Unless it's a bond referendum. If we would vote no bond, then we can restrict it. But I don't believe we can restrict what the board can do in the future.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe that the way this is written is we're dealing with this proposal only. It doesn't, we're not dealing with any future proposals.
Right.
Those will be handled separately.
Okay, that's just what I want to make sure, because alternates 1 through 9 are in this proposal. So I didn't want to kick those out and we can never consider them again.
Right, and this doesn't.
I
Correct.
think this is just authorizing them to enter into a contract with Jamerson Lewis and Southern Air to negotiate it. As far as funding, it would be a separate vote of the board after May's meeting, at which time Davenport will be here to present a financial analysis.
It would take appropriation on other things, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we probably need to let the school know, they need to put an appropriation clause. I don't need reviewing it or if they're on the council, but they need an appropriation clause in the contract that says it is still subject to board appropriation.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
one reason for moving on this, you heard the HVAC companies say that they need to order this equipment if they're going to do it this summer, and that these other counties and schools that are getting the COVA money, they anticipate down the road that they'll be requesting it. So this was what they wanted. They wanted us to get it in before the end of the month to give them word, and I think now with this motion, the school system can go back to them and say, okay, we're ready to go. Say whatever they want to it, but negotiate and say, we're ready to go, you can order the equipment.
All right, the motion's been duly made and seconded. Further discussion? Have a roll call vote. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan. Aye. And I also vote aye. Okay. FY20 audit request, school CIP. Per an agreement between the school board and the Board of Supervisors, the school end of year local contribution savings will be transferred to the school capital improvement fund after the official audit is performed and reported to the Board of Supervisors. The amount of year-end savings verified by the FY20 audit is $425,980. Floor is open for discussion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is what our usual practice is, and I would make a motion that we transfer the $425,980
To the CIP.
to the school's CIP fund.
Okay. Motion duly made. Is that second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. Mr. Abbott.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next is school appropriation request. The board requested that this item be tabled to the April meeting. Dr. Bennett is requesting an additional $397,595 of local funds be appropriated to the current FY '21 school operating budget. And we
Mr.
have the request here.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Abbott.
with us just doing the 425 into the CIP fund and also with the COVA money, which we found out the school will be getting since then, I think, I don't think we should take this up tonight.
Yeah, with pending more, it was more information forthcoming.
And I have some figures that we are on a local effort if you need it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
The funding match was $5,568,000, and was what in our newly revised. That was our requirement. And our requirement is 5,397. So we have appropriated a extra 200,000 over and above what we had planned.
Additional item, concerns, issues?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hogan.
the 400,000 odd we just appropriated goes to CIP. This money would be for the operating budget. And when we went back through the appropriations process at the beginning of the fiscal year, we said if we had the money, we'd give it to them. I think we ought to stick to our word, and I think we ought to give it to them. If they don't use it, it'll go into that CIP fund. I think, you're talking almost $800,000 here that could go right into that high school renovation, and maybe they could find a way to pay for option 9. I don't think they're going to spend it. I would hope they wouldn't spend it unwisely, because they know that it would be used for CIP if they don't spend it. I'd make a motion we give it to them and appropriate the $397,595 to the school operating budget.
Motion duly made, is that second? Hearing none, we'll move on. Town-county joint meeting. We need to check our calendars and see when is appropriate, not appropriate, but when it suits everyone to be available for a joint meeting with the town. Now, due to the workload that's already upon the county that I know about, I don't know about the town, but I know that our plate is pretty much filled for this month and probably the next month. So I would think the earliest that we could possibly meet would be June, if that suits the town. That's what I think we can send them. What's y'all's thoughts on this?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I can think of is that we asked the town for some dates, and we give a date, that if we've got some member that can't be down there, this is not any, we aren't gonna be taking any official votes, and so, if it can't be there, that's my opinion. If we could get all of them together, it would surprise me.
Yeah, I think the same thing. But if looking at June, just what kind of date? See, the council meets the second Monday. We meet the third. So Monday's over,
The fourth Tuesday is our workshop.
work
meeting.
session. So anytime other than the second and third week, any day then would be acceptable, as far as we know.
May I comment?
Please.
Okay, I have the letter of invitation from Mayor Connor. They want a detailed agenda with suggested dates, and they said once they receive the agenda, that he will share it with the council to accept the invitation and to consider meeting with us.
So we need to set a
We've got
date.
some information we need to submit to them in order to, for the council to agree to
To meet.
meeting.
Okay. Still goes back to June then, I think.
Well, I think you need to submit to staff some agenda items that you would like to talk to the council about, and then we prepare that and submit it back to Mayor Connell.
Okay. We'll be done our part.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hinkle.
I think one of the issues on the agenda then would be how can we work more closely with the town to avoid the Christmas parade fiasco?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. We should collect our thoughts and email you or call you on the phone or come by your office. How about that?
That would be helpful, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. Carver Price Legacy Museum lease. This item was tabled at the March meeting and requested to be placed on the April agenda, requesting staff to obtain additional information prior to final action of the board. Now, also, February the 16th, 2021, Ms. Annie Trent and Mrs. Janice Marston, members of the Carver Price Legacy Museum Board, appeared to request the following, and you see it on the next page, the 1, 2, 3 items. What I'd like to do is to appoint a committee to study the future renovation, lease, or transfer the property in addition to use of the awarded state funds at the Carver Price Legacy Museum. And in doing that, I'd like to appoint Mr. John Hinkle as chair, Mr. Watkins Abbott, and Delegate Matt Ferris, and the county administrator, Ms. Adams, to this committee.
Mr.
Can I
Chairman,
get a
you don't need for you to appoint a committee, we don't need a motion, do we?
No, we don't. I don't think we do.
But we do need a motion to authorize the Department of Historic Resources to work with Carver Price Legacy Museum Board in a nomination to add the entire Carver Price Elementary School to the National Historic Register.
Yes, sir.
And I will submit that in the form of a motion.
Motion duly made, is that second? Okay, discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Appointments, or committee appointments, Board of Zoning Appeals appointment. Does anyone have anyone in mind in regards to the zoning board appointment? I tell you the truth, personally, I just let it skip my mind for some unknown reason.
Mr. Chairman, is that one done by district? Or is that one just?
I think it's, no,
No.
I didn't think it was.
No, that's just,
You make a
Sure.
recommendation.
By the court, all we really do is make a suggestion, and then I have to file a petition to the court. Take the suggestion, we make a suggestion to the court.
Does anybody have anybody that they've talked to? Well, why don't we just table this to next month?
I don't think they meet very often, do they?
They don't.
We haven't had one in going on 2 years now.
I think it's fine to wait another month.
I think too. Everybody agree with that? Okay.
Mr. Carter?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Also backing up to number 3 under the Carver Price.
Yes.
The current lease states that they have the ability to apply for grant funding to preserve artifacts. So their current operating lease gives them the ability to do that. So it's not a motion of the board.
You mind repeating that?
Number 3, under Carver
Yes,
Price,
yes.
they wanted a letter of support from the board to apply and use grant
Oh,
funds.
okay.
But they already have that ability to do that under the current operating lease.
So no action there.
You may have to tell them, I see they left. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen, library board appointment. The library board notified of the unfortunate passing of the library board's chair, Pamela Judy, excuse me, on March 28, 2021. Please see the attached email from Diana Harvey, library director, with a suggestion for appointment to the library board to fill Mrs. Judy's unexpired term. And this is in your district, Mr. Hogan.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. And I know that Miss Judy, we are saddened by her passing. And I know she had suggested a replacement. I have not had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Williams. I just feel like before I place her name in nomination, I need to double check with her. And I would request to put this off to next month.
Okay. Rest of the board members okay with tabling this next month? Okay. Next, gentlemen, is our consent agenda, includes approval of bills, minutes, supplemental appropriations, line item transfers, and fund transfers. Any item on consent agenda shall be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the vote on the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be considered by the board individually in order to which they were removed from the consent agenda immediately following consideration of the consent agenda. And you have before you, line items, all of it, what I just said, bills, minutes, supplemental appropriations, et cetera. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the consent agenda.
Motion duly made, is that second?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs. Mr. Abbott. Mr. Hogan.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay. Mr. Latchney. Ms. Adams.
No report, Mr. Chairman, except I will
You-
notate that there are a couple of invitation under your informational items that you may want to review, and some additional information, but other than that, that's all I have to report.
All right, very good. Very good. And you have before you the reports, informational items that Ms. Adams just alluded to. Any questions on any of the items listed?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Hogan.
I don't know that it pertains to one of those items, but there's a list here of a bunch of items. I don't know what this is. Is that something we're supposed to consider tonight, or?
No, that was, I believe you had received an email from the Commonwealth's Attorney concerning office supplies, and several of you have asked me about that, so I just supplied that list of what type of items that have been ordered this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor concerns, Mr. Hinkle.
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Hibbs. Mr. Abbott.
Mr. Chairman, you were nice enough to allow me to do it at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did leave out one thing, Mr. Chairman, you are up for reelection, and you have my endorsement. And I will be for you or against you, whichever will help the most.
I got it. Thank you. Michelle's laughing on that. Mr. Hogan.
No, sir, I just want to say to Mr. Abbott, I appreciate his service to this board, and we may not always agree, but, you know, he brings a lot of insight, a lot of experience, and we're going to miss it. And I thank him for his service, and we're going,
That's very nice, but y'all are totally capable of handling it, I am convinced, and especially our two new guys have picked it up just like a duck to water.
I have no other concerns tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'll have to echo too what Mr. Hogan just said. One thing I wanted to say, and I hate to even get into it just for a second. I've promise, and that is litter within the county. It's gotten to the point where it's just unreal. Everybody seems to want to talk about why and how Appomattox County has become such an area that people deposit, throw out the litter or whatever, blows out the back of the truck, whatever. I don't know what we can do about it, if anything, but I just don't know where to go with it. I don't know. VDOT is, I know is responsible to a certain degree.
At one time, Mr. Chairman, we had, the local jail, not local, our regional jail people picking it up. I don't know whether they do that anymore or not.
Right. I just don't know. You know, Mr. Hinkle?
Donnie Simpson gave the town a report at our last meeting, and he said, he addressed the issue of the trash, and he said that he does not have the availability anymore to use the prisoners. He explained why.
Really?
Kind of complicated.
Oh, boy. I just don't know. I really don't know what to do on this. Sounds like there's nothing to do, but I guess it needs to be studied.
And that may be a question for the sheriff, because they receive an annual grant from VDOT
Uh-huh.
to pay deputies to oversee cleanup.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay, upon that, we need to venture into a closed session. Yes, yes, sir.
Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Appomattox County desire to discuss the closed meeting following consultation with legal counsel fully retained by the public body regarding legal matters prior
Yes.
Mr. Abbott.
I move that we pay the invoices in the amount of $44,000.
70820. Mr. Chairman, I'll second the invoices for $44,708.20.
Okay. Motion duly made and second. Discussion. We have a roll call vote. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hicks. Mr. Abbott. Oh, I also vote aye. Next meeting is May the 17th, and Mr. Abbott.
Mr. Chairman, I move we rise